And this case took place in 2016, and at the time, a man called Peter Morgan, he was a multi-millionaire. He was living the high life, buying properties and luxury cars. However, Peter went through what he has described as a midlife crisis.
Have you ever wondered how far someone might go for love? But what if that love isn't real? Imagine a world where everything is a web of lies and control, and the person at the center is trapped in his own illusions. This is the story of a multi-millionaire from Wales, a man who seemed to have it all but found himself caught in a nightmare he created. What drove him to destroy his life, pulling others down along the way? In this story, answers aren't easy, and you'll be shocked to see how far emotions can push someone toward tragedy. Pay close attention, there's much less truth here than it seems. Peter Morgan, a wealthy Welsh tycoon, once stood at the peak of success. Outwardly, his life looked perfect, filled with luxury and stability, but beneath the surface, shadows of a midlife crisis lurked, shaking up his routine and driving him to chase lost youth. On a quiet morning in Wales, inside an old manor that promised peace within its thick walls, two women sat together on a sofa, sharing secrets. One confessed that her lover, once a joy, had become nothing but a source of frustration, and she was ready to make a life-changing decision. Meanwhile, miles away, a man sat alone, clutching his phone, his fingers shaking as he held on to the last bits of his calm. Moments before, he'd heard something that would forever change his life. This tale unfolded in 2016, centered on Peter Morgan, a successful man with deep roots in Wales. Born in 1962 on a 300-acre farm near Newport, he grew up in a financially secure family. He always knew his future would be a farmer like his parents. Even as a child, Peter showed a sense of entitlement and wasn't interested in school. He had simple goals and never thought of leaving his familiar world. At 16, he quit school to join the family business, which became a steady source of income despite his lack of formal education. For years, Peter lived a predictable life. He worked on the farm, married a childhood friend, and settled down with their two daughters in the small town. For a while, the comfort and stability of family life kept him happy. But by 30, Peter chose a new path. He left farming and started his own business. Although it wasn't exciting work, it was very successful. He began with poultry barns and built a network of industrial chicken houses. Peter's business thrived, and by 40, he sold it for a seven-figure sum. This sale changed everything. The midlife crisis crept in, and its effects hit him hard. It was as if Peter turned overnight from a sensible businessman into someone driven to experience life in its wildest forms. He spent money recklessly, buying Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and decking out his new mansion with extravagant items, including a tank and a helicopter. His fascination with weapons also became obvious. An AK-47 sat on his office desk, though the changes ran much deeper than flashy spending. On a business trip to Amsterdam, Peter crossed a line at a private club. Paying a performer for an intimate service was his first act of infidelity. This awakened a powerful desire, leading him into a double life: stability with his family on one side, and luxury and indulgence on the other. By 2011, at another private club, a friend introduced him to an app for booking elite escorts. This discovery marked the beginning of his descent. Back home, Peter lost himself in this digital world where fantasies became reality. He spent his free time browsing profiles from Newport to Cardiff, arranging meetings with escorts across the country. He never sees the same woman twice. He hid this double life as business trips, and his wife, Helen, busy with her own life, suspected nothing. Peter had become skilled at covering his tracks. In 2012, Peter's 50th birthday brought new change when he met Georgina Simons, an energetic 22-year-old. this encounter would reshape his life once again. Georgina grew up in Newport with 3 brothers. Strong-willed and confident, she left school at 16, took a job at a call center, and enrolled in cosmetology classes. Her relationship with Pete Deem, 6 years older, once seemed like a stable future. Georgina's life changed when she had her daughter Emily at 17. She tried to settle into her role as a young mother, living with Pete at his mother's house. Her call center job barely paid enough, and every morning in the damp house, she felt the urge for a better life. Georgina wanted more money, freedom, and excitement, feeling trapped by her monotonous job and Pete's simple, home-centered lifestyle. Pete valued stability, but Georgina grew frustrated, craving something bigger and more fulfilling. Determined to improve her life, Georgina decided to make a living from her appearance. She became fixated on her image, experimenting with bold makeup, provocative outfits, and cosmetic surgery. She had 2 breast augmentations, liposuction, and took classes in burlesque and exotic dancing. This world opened doors to financial freedom, and she started earning sums she'd only imagined before. Working at a private dance club, Georgina transformed herself to attract wealthy men willing to pay for her company, embracing a lifestyle of luxury and excitement. At this point, Georgina's life began to shift. She moved herself and Peter out of his mother's home and into their own apartment, gaining a sense of independence. But it didn't feel like enough. Her ambitions and taste for luxury grew stronger daily. Soon, her job at the club couldn't satisfy her needs, and she started to consider working as a high-end escort. To her, this was a way to secure a better future for her daughter. She signed up on a popular app under the alias Hannah James, offering various services for substantial fees. Georgina was confident that her looks and skills would attract wealthy clients, and she was right. Pete knew about her plan but opposed it. He worried about the risks that came with that kind of work and didn't want her to get involved. But his love for her and fear of losing her led to a compromise. They agreed to an open relationship, allowing Georgina to pursue escorting as long as it stayed hidden from their families. Her profile on the app quickly attracted attention, and in May 2012, Peter Morgan, a wealthy man in the midst of a midlife crisis, found her picture. He felt instantly captivated and set up a meeting. On their first date, Peter and Georgina had dinner and chatted about casual topics, and Peter sensed a connection he hadn't felt in a long time. He was drawn not only to her appearance but also to her confidence. That evening, he paid her $200 for a kiss, but by morning the amount had grown. For Georgina, it was just another job, but for Peter, it felt like something more. He had never met the same escort twice, but Georgina was different, and soon he wanted to see her regularly. Their meetings went from monthly to weekly, and Peter realized he was falling for her. He loved spending time with her and no longer cared about the cost. They went to movies, dined out, and he showered her with gifts, clothes, shoes, expensive jewelry, even a red Ferrari. Over time, his feelings became obsessive. He wanted Georgina by his side constantly, and she became more than just an escort to him. She was his companion, something deeper, as his wife and children faded into the background. One weekend, Peter secretly paid Georgina $10,000 to stay with him at his family home without his wife Helen suspecting a thing. Helen had no idea that what was happening in her own bedroom could tear their marriage apart. For Georgina, this was only a business because she was uninterested in Peter's obsession. She focused only on the money he was willing to spend and continued seeing other clients without guilt, keeping her boyfriend Pete in her life too. This didn't stop Peter. He couldn't bear the thought of Georgina seeing anyone else. Driven by jealousy, he offered her an exclusive arrangement. Peter agreed to pay her a massive sum to be with him alone, and Georgina accepted, realizing she could earn more from him than from several clients combined. From then on, she only saw Peter receiving around $133,000 each month, which covered her expenses and more. At first, their arrangement seemed manageable, but soon everything began to spiral. Peter moved Georgina and her daughter to a small bungalow on his old estate, claiming it was for their safety since the main house was in disrepair. He banned Pete from visiting, ensuring Georgina stayed isolated. For 3 years, Peter poured his wealth into creating a dream life for her. He showered her with gifts, trips to London, vacations, and even a luxury holiday in South Africa. He paid for her cosmetic treatments and spent every moment he could with her, trying to build a perfect life together. They went ATV riding, watched movies, and walked along the estate's paths, sharing intimate moments that left Peter feeling fulfilled. However, beneath the extravagant lifestyle, fractures were beginning to appear. Although Georgina lived in a castle, she still saw Peter as just a client and did her job without any emotional ties. Spending more time with Peter Morgan meant she saw less of her boyfriend, who struggled with her absence and the growing distance between them as he tried to bridge the gap. Pete turned his focus inward, improving himself by working out, changing his appearance, and trying to become more appealing to Georgina. He lost weight, upgraded his wardrobe, and even whitened his teeth, hoping to win back her attention. However, reality turned out much harsher than he expected. Meanwhile, Peter's wife, Helen, started sensing something was wrong. For a long time, she ignored his mysterious business trips, but her suspicions grew when she found a flower receipt addressed to another woman. Realizing her husband's infidelity, she didn't confront him but instead kept her distance and buried herself in her routines, appearing content or simply detached. At the same time, Georgina started calling her partners Rich Pete and Poor Pete, showing clear preference for the former. This nickname deeply humiliated Pete, who felt even more like a failure. Life in the castle continued, surrounded by luxury, yet isolated from reality. Georgina spent her days and nights with Peter Morgan, leaving her daughter distanced from her father, and her relationship with Pete fell apart. Georgina stayed indifferent, seeing Peter Morgan solely as a financial source. Each encounter with Georgina cost Peter thousands of dollars, which funded her luxurious lifestyle. To add excitement, she began inviting other women to the castle, which Peter found thrilling. He enjoyed the variety, often asking Georgina to bring someone new, although he still wanted her as his main companion. On one occasion, while his wife and children were away, Peter invited Georgina and a friend to his family home. They spent the evening in the marital bedroom, and Peter Morgan pushed things further by asking one of the women to wear Helen's dress, acting out his fantasy of a trio with Georgina and his wife. Though he knew Helen would never agree to such a scenario, he indulged in the fantasy. What Peter didn't know was that Georgina filmed the entire night, capturing every moment, including her friend changing into Helen's dress. This recording would later play a significant role in the events that followed. As their affair continued, Peter's life began to unravel. Georgina's boyfriend, Pete, reached his breaking point, tired of her spending more time with Peter Morgan than with him and their daughter. He finally ended their relationship, marking the first crack in Georgina's life. Not long after, Helen discovered the affair. She stumbled upon messages between Peter and Georgina, and realizing the depth of his betrayal, she stopped ignoring the signs. Peter tried to explain and confessed everything, but Helen had enough. She filed for divorce, demanding a large share of their assets. Georgina's life was soon struck by tragedy. In mid-2015, her father took his own life, leaving her devastated. Before she could fully recover, she faced another blow when her ex-boyfriend Pete also ended his life after their breakup, unable to cope without her and their daughter. These back-to-back losses shattered her life in ways she couldn't overcome. In November 2015, they found him hanging in a wooded area. This event shattered Georgina's spirit. The once confident woman fell into a severe depression. Alcohol and illegal substances became her main companions. Her life started falling apart as she struggled with pain and loss, sinking into a darkness she couldn't escape. Over time, her relationship with Peter worsened. Georgina distanced herself, ignoring his attempts to stay close. She quietly blamed him for the death of her previous partner, Pete, and saw him as the one who had ruined her life. Seeking comfort, she turned to a longtime friend, with whom she felt free from control and pressure. Their friendship grew, and she saw it as an escape from Peter's influence, where she felt supported and cared for. However, Peter couldn't accept her new relationship. He had come to view Georgina as his possession and reminded her constantly of all the money he had spent on her and her daughter. To him, his financial support entitled him to control over her life. His possessive behavior became more obvious, and the more he tried to control her, the more defiant Georgina became. She refused to comply with his demands and frequently insulted him in public, openly challenging him and diminishing his self-worth. Her once strong and lively personality now turned against him destructively. Georgina sank deeper into substance abuse, trying to numb her pain. Her use of alcohol and drugs grew worse, leading to rumors that eventually reached Child Protective Services. Authorities opened an investigation to determine if Georgina was fit to care for her daughter. When she heard about the inquiry, she immediately blamed Peter. Though there was no evidence linking him to it, Georgina wouldn't listen to any explanations. In her mind, he was the cause of all her troubles, and she decided to confront him, leading to a major confrontation between them. This clash marked the peak of the tension. Unable to let her go, Peter started spying on her, desperate to monitor her actions. Using his access to the estate, he installed listening devices with SIM cards in her bungalow, which allowed him to call and listen to the room remotely. Peter dialed into the devices daily. He called up to 10 times a day, spending hours listening for signs of betrayal. For over 2 months, he monitored her daily conversations, mostly just hearing her chat with her daughter or small talk with friends. On January 10th, 2016, everything changed. That day, Georgina had a friend over and their talk shifted when Peter joined the call to listen. He overheard Georgina complaining about him, saying her life with him felt like a nightmare, but she felt stuck due to his financial support. She accused him of bringing child services into her life and admitted she felt like a prisoner on the estate. Luckily for Georgina, the child services investigation had ended, so she no longer risked losing custody of her daughter. Yet she had no plans to tell Peter. Instead, she saw this as a way to manipulate him further, using his emotions to get more money. She knew the threat of losing her daughter was a powerful way to control him, and she intended to make the most of it. But her plan ran even deeper. Peter heard her when she was telling her friend that she wanted to trick him into signing over the bungalow, then leave him for good. She also held a trump card, a compromising video of the night she and her friend wore his wife's dress. She planned to use the recording to blackmail him, threatening to show it to his ex-wife and daughters. Hearing all this, Peter felt his world collapse. He realized Georgina wanted to destroy his life by using his weaknesses against him. He knew that if his daughters saw the recording, they would cut ties with him, and his friends and colleagues would abandon him. Everything he'd built could fall apart in a moment. Sitting in the silence of his home, Peter felt waves of shock and anger. He couldn't believe the woman he'd trusted was planning this betrayal. Her words made him see that their relationship had been an illusion, and he had merely been a puppet. On January 11th, Peter barely made it through the night, but began planning his revenge, carefully considering each step to take back control of his life. The next day, his phone's search history revealed his intentions, showing he was looking up everything needed to carry out his plan. On January 12th, Peter went to a hardware store and bought rope, zip ties, plastic bags, and rubber gloves. He returned home and went straight to the bungalow where Georgina lived. This time he skipped any pleasantries and confronted her, saying he knew about her plans. He accused her of blackmail and made it clear he wouldn't let things go that way. Desperate to keep her, Peter threw a pile of cash at her feet, promising everything from marriage to a share of his wealth. He even offered to take out a life insurance policy, making her the beneficiary, with $1 million payout if anything happened to him. But Georgina coldly rejected his offer. Her hateful words made Peter furious. In a rush of anger, he grabbed the rope and tried to scare her by wrapping it around her neck. When Georgina threatened him, saying he would pay for everything, his rage turned into something darker. Overcome by his anger, frustration, and disappointment, Peter tightened the rope and didn't stop until she stopped breathing. Once Georgina was dead, Peter felt no relief, only emptiness. He put on rubber gloves, tied her wrists and ankles with zip ties, and wrapped her body in plastic. Then he took her to an old family property, hiding her in an outbuilding, thinking no one would find her there. But his carelessness led to his downfall. Security cameras he had installed captured everything, and Georgina's phone, which he forgot to turn off, allowed authorities to trace her location.
A businessman called Peter Morgan is captured on security cameras that he himself had placed on one of his properties. He's moving a large package.
When Georgina failed to pick up her daughter from school, her friends and family grew worried. By evening, her absence became obvious, and the police began a search. Peter Morgan became the main suspect, but he kept sticking to his story. He said he saw her around noon, but claimed she had told him to leave.
Where do we think she was going at 12 o'clock?
Didn't say. She didn't say.
However, when the police tracked her phone's location, they quickly realized he was lying. Under pressure from detectives, Peter tried to explain that he took Georgina's phone to protect her from harmful substances, but his explanation didn't convince anyone, and he was taken to the station for more questioning. After hours of being questioned, he broke down and admitted to Georgina's death. He said he had been pushed to the limit and tried to explain that he had given her everything to save their relationship, but she only responded with threats and lies. The trial of Peter Morgan gained a lot of attention. Even though he confessed, he later tried to get a lesser sentence by claiming mental health issues and emotional distress, hoping to reduce the charge to manslaughter. However, the evidence was too strong because of his confession and surveillance footage. In the end, Peter Morgan was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole after 25 years. This story is more than just a crime story. It's a tragedy that shows the dangers of obsession and human weakness. Peter Morgan, a man who wanted love and acceptance, mixed up love with control. He believed that money could buy a relationship, but in the end, he was hurt by his own wrong ideas. Georgina, who wanted to give her daughter a better life, couldn't stop and ended up in a bad situation. The biggest tragedy is little Emily, who lost both her parents. She became a victim of adult problems, with no one thinking about her future. Remember, in difficult times there is always a way out if you recognize your mistakes early and avoid building your happiness on lies and control.